Welcome to the very first episode of the Caerphilly Cyclist. Now, I realise I may not be in perfect shape to be telling people about cycling and gear and biking advice, but I used to do a lot of cycling and I ended up waiting for an operation for 3 years. I couldn't cycle, I got depressed, sold all my kit and put on loads of weight. Now that I've decided to pick myself up, dust myself off, get back into it and get in shape, especially with the arrival of my first child, I've decided I need to do something about it. So I bought a gravel bike because the most in shape I ever was previously was riding a gravel bike. And I've realised that for the kit that most of us can actually afford to buy, there isn't that many reviews out there. A lot of the reviews are for very high-end stuff. You get the odd review here and there of the middle-of-the-road stuff that most of us can afford. But for example, this bike, I could only find one written review from an American magazine. So I decided to give it a go myself and show you guys around the bike and around the kit that I choose to buy and my journey back into cycling. So without further ado, welcome to my review of the GT E-Grade Bolt. Well, what is it at first? Well, it's an electric gravel bike, but in itself that actually covers a wide range these days. A gravel bike can be everything from a cross gravel racer, which is little more than a road bike with road components and wider wheels, to a very aggressive off-road bike with short travel forks, dropper seat posts and 1x drivetrains for very steep climbs. So where does the grade sit in all of this? Well, it's about middle. It's an adventure gravel bike. So it doesn't have a fork, it doesn't have a very low gearing for steep climbs. It does have mounting points for a lot of luggage, a very comfortable riding position, and it has WTB nano tyres, which are a legacy off-road tread. So it's for a real mix of riding. So let's dig in to what that is like. Well, first of all, it's got Shimano GRX 400 componentry, which consists of a 2x10 drivetrain and GRX brakes. The 2x10 drivetrain doesn't go that low, so if you're trying to climb really steep single track, it is going to struggle. But on my local favourite place to cycle, Caerphilly Forest Drive, it's capable of climbing all the tarmac, which is in itself very steep, all the fire breaks and some sections of the single track, which is exactly what you want really out of a bike like this, because I bought this because I also want to ride on tarmac. I want to be able to ride my bike back and forth to work, so I don't want a 1x drivetrain which is very low geared and I'm spinning out on tarmac. And the tarmac performance on this bike is actually really good. The WTB treads almost have a narrow rim running all the way around the perimeter, and it does give a very good rolling resistance for an off-road tyre. The only downside of the tyres on tarmac is that the narrow treads flex a little bit when you're turning in the corners and they feel a little bit vague. I've never actually had a nasty slide with it, but it does feel a little bit more wallowy than a road tyre will, but it's fine once you get used to it. And the actual speed it will carry on tarmac, I was very impressed with. It gets on the flat, I can get it well above the speed that the battery will carry it, up into the, I suppose, 20 mile an hour or so, but it's very difficult to know when you're actually on the flat what looks like flat. Sometimes you can struggle with, and sometimes you're flying along because a tiny adjustment in gradients will adjust it, but still it's very easy on tarmac to keep it above the battery. And then when you get to the hills, you have that assistant to push you along, which for me, all my riding back from home from work is uphill, and I work 12-hour shifts in a fairly manual job, and sometimes I just don't have the energy left to cycle home. So being able to rely on the battery for that bit of a shove uphill is excellent. And while I'm building my fitness back up, having the battery there again on climbs is a great way of extending my range and extending my enjoyment while I'm building my fitness up. And I'm already finding myself more and more dropping the level down on the battery, and I pretty much now only rely on it for climbing. So while we talk about on-road performance and the surprising turn of speed it's capable of, a lot better than I was expecting anyway, that comes from being fairly lightweight. This bike weighs 14.7 kilos, which is over the normal grade. You pretty much only got the extra weight of the battery and the motor and a little bit of beefiness in the frame there, and it does make it a very capable bike. So let's talk about the off-road performance now. Overall, I'm very impressed with it. Like I say, it does struggle on really steep climbs, but that is a trade-off for the extra speed that it will carry on the road. But the tyres, the WTB Nano Legacy mountain bike tread on them, grip really well on gravel and a bit of muck and dirt. I've ridden this bike on fire breaks, on sections of trail up Caerphilly Drive on the truck trail. I've ridden it down the red and black on the free ride, if anybody does know what that section is. And the bike and the tyres handled the track fairly well, a lot slower than you would be going on a suspended mountain bike, and I really did have to be careful picking my route, but I didn't have any problems with it. I managed to hit a few of the drops, tabletops and jumps on it, and it handled it fine. But the one thing I will say is I wouldn't feel like I could do that level of off-road riding on it for very long. Without the fork on the front, the vibration did really start making my wrists hurt. But again, that is beyond what this bike is for. If you want to do that kind of thing, you want the really aggressive gravel bike with the forks, or even a mountain bike. But for what this bike is capable of, it's bang on where it should be. You can ride on tarmac, jump off-road, and you know that you've got the performance there. Whatever you come across, you're going to likely be able to ride it, unless it's a really silly jump or drop, and then you're going to have to push it or carry it. But I think for what this bike is, the performance is bang on the money. Overall, for a rigid bike, the grade is surprisingly comfortable. This is due in part to the WTB Nano tyres, but also the GT's triple triangle frame design. This allows a fair bit of flex. Off-road, the GRX 400 brakes work really well in conjunction with these tyres, and you can really get some stopping power in. When the back brake does break traction, it breaks traction very predictably, and it's very easy to feather the brakes and gain grip and carry on your way. The riding position on this bike is surprisingly comfortable for a bike with drop bars. I've had to do very little adjustment to get myself comfortable on it. The one issue I have been having is, you can see the flat pedals on it at the moment. I was having issues with the clip-ons, or the clipless pedal, sorry, causing pain in my knee. No matter what I did with adjustment, moved them back and across as far as I couldn't get it right and reduce that knee pain. So I've gone back to flats while I sort out what was going on there. I've got a feeling it might be an issue with the shoes and I might need a wider shoe, but that's not a problem. That's not an issue with the bike, but that's why it's on flats at the moment. It will benefit from a set of clipless pedals once I can sort that out. The saddle that it came with was a scoop, and it was a very comfortable saddle, or a very good quality saddle anyway, but I didn't find that it quite fitted my needs. I wanted a saddle with the pressure relief channel in the middle, so I've gone for a giant saddle. That's a very personal choice. So let's talk about the motor and battery. The motor is 250 watts at 40 newton meters. Now that is half or less of the torque of the more aggressive gravel bikes like the Specialized or the electric mountain bikes. But that's only half the picture, because it also weighs a lot less. And like I say, on the flat, you're normally pedaling above the battery speed anyway. So this is a bike you do have to put the work in yourself. The battery and motor is there to give you assistance on the steep climbs, and that it does really well. It feels very natural when you're pedaling it, but when you turn the battery off, you realise what that motor was doing, because all of a sudden it feels like you're pedaling through porridge and you have to bang down a few gears, which is exactly what I wanted out of the bike. Once you do reach the 16 mile an hour speed assistance of the battery, and the motor kicks off, it does so very naturally. It actually overruns a little bit before turning off to let you take over the power. And unless you're going up a climb, you barely notice it. You don't feel it on the flat. The battery size itself, again, I think that's 250 watts, which is, or watt hours, which is half or less than electric mountain bikes or the beefier electric gravel bikes. And I've seen reviews, like, well, quick comparisons online anyway, because there weren't many reviews of this bike, but there's a few side-by-side comparisons where they just compare the specs, and this always gets marked down on the battery size against the bikes with bigger batteries. But that's only looking, again, at half the picture, because on the flat, you're not using the battery, you're only using the battery on a climb. Unless you're doing a lot of alpine riding, you're not going to be using that battery very often. And I found that I get 50, 60, 70 miles out of the battery easily, which is about the same as what you get out of the other bikes, if not, maybe a bit more, depending on the type of riding you're doing. So don't, if you've come across reviews saying that the bikes with these Marley systems have got less range, don't worry about it. They're lighter bikes, and they're not using the battery as much as the bigger, heavier bikes. I think the Specialized gravel bikes weigh in at nearly 20 kilos. You've got 5 kilos less weight over this, and these carry speed a lot better. Now, I compared this bike to 3 other bikes. I was looking at Ribble's Cross Gravel Racer and Ribble's gravel bike. The Cross Gravel Racer did come in at 13.8 kilos, but that had road group set on it, and I didn't feel like it was going to be beefy enough for some of the stuff I was doing. The gravel bike came in at 14.1 kilos, so 600 grams lighter than this, but had a 1x drive set on it, which I felt like I was going to spin out on tarmac. I didn't think there would be enough speed there for the tarmac ride back and forth to work. And I looked at the Merida E Silex 400, which is very similar spec to this and has the same Shimano GRX 400 group set. And that actually weighed 14.1 kilos, again 600 grams lighter than this. And for the same spec and a 2x10 gearing, that was an impressive weight. But that bike costs £3,000. You can find last year's bike on treads for about the same money as this, about £2,300, but only in a small. At the moment, treads have this bike in stock in all sizes for £2,400. And I think that makes it a bargain compared to the other bikes. Ribble's bikes are also on sale at the moment for about similar money as this, for similar componentry. But I didn't feel like they quite matched the spec that I wanted, and I like the ability to be able to take a bike back to a shop if I'm having an issue with it. I don't want to have to mess about trying to post bikes or components away in the post. So I settled on the Grade. So in conclusion, I think this is an excellent all-round bike. At the moment, they're for sale in treads for £2,400. You can get them cheaper than that again on other sites on the web, but like I said, I wanted a store that I could go in and buy it from. And if you want a bike for mixed riding, good on tarmac, but be able to pick up some off-road trail and not be stuck to the tarmac, and you want a bike that's got a bit of battery assistance for the climbs, but does ride well without the battery, this is exactly what you need. I was very impressed when I put a few hundred miles in on this bike and I realised what its capabilities were and what it could do. Like I say, I rode a gravel bike before and I was expecting this to feel heavy and sluggish off the battery in comparison, and it doesn't feel all that bad. It doesn't roll much slower on tarmac. It's a very capable bike. I'm very happy with this, and I'm sure if you're in the market for an all-round gravel bike that won't break the bank, this will suit you very well. And the colour in the flesh looks a lot better than it does online as well. I didn't like the colour on this, and I almost stumped up the extra money for the Merida that I was talking about earlier, just because I preferred the colour better. But I managed to give myself a slap and not be so silly, save myself £600, and I've got a bike that I am amazingly happy with. So if you've got this far, thanks for watching, folks. If you want to see more gear, kit reviews and follow my journey back into riding and hopefully picking up a few marathons and races over the next coming couple of years, please do give a like and subscribe and follow the channel. See you next time.